It is the start of a presidency like we have never seen before. Supercharging AI in the U.S., renaming maps, pardoning January 6ers, threatening tons of tariffs, and that is just day one.
Stargate will be building the physical and virtual infrastructure to power the next generation of advancements in AI. We renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Sounds so beautiful, the Gulf of America. I think we're going to do things that people will be shocked at.
We've got teams at the White House and all over the world to help us navigate these uncharted waters, plus what the broligarchy of tech titans at the inauguration means for this administration. And AGs across the country are already trying to take Trump to court over that birthright citizenship executive order. California's AG will be here a little bit later this hour. And speaking of executive orders, there were also some on Trump's climate policies, from the cars we drive to the oil we drill for them. We're digging into those in tonight's Temperature Check. Those are just some of the stories we're following. There is so much more to unpack, so let's get going, because this is Stay Tuned Now. I have a right to make a deal. That is something that President Trump just said at the White House while fielding questions from reporters about almost everything under the sun. And that phrase pretty much sums up so much of what we've seen, so much of what we will continue to see for the foreseeable future. Whatever is happening in the world of consequence, the president seems to be reserving the right to make a deal. And right now, the deals coming out of the White House are flying out of there so fast, it's hard to keep track. So many of them are the literal undoing of deals and executive orders made by former President Biden, pulling out of the WHO, Paris Accords, firing people. We're going to do deep dives into some of them a little bit later in the show. But a lot of his rationale, his thinking, his approach on full, unfiltered display today, taking questions from reporters after announcing a new $500 billion deal on supercharging AI in the United States. He was asked about everything: January 6 pardons, China tariffs, ceasefire, NATO, you name it. But again, the actual purpose of this meeting was to announce a new AI venture, a $500 billion private investment into AI infrastructure here in the U.S. And that investment is going to be led by a group of executives, there they are, who will now be collectively known as Stargate. You can see them there with Trump. Oracle CEO Larry Ellison, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, and the Japanese billionaire CEO of SoftBank.
A new American company that will invest $500 billion at least in AI infrastructure in the United States.
We wouldn't be able to do this without you, Mr. President, and I'm thrilled that we get to. I think it'll be an exciting project. I think we'll be able to do all of the wonderful things that these guys talked about. But the fact that we get to do this in the United States is, I think, wonderful.
How will AI help us with the fight against the various problems, diseases, etc.?
These guys can maybe share more about some of the work they're doing there. I believe that as this technology progresses, we will see diseases get cured at an unprecedented rate.
Cancer diagnosis using AI has the promise of just being a simple blood test.
Let's bring in NBC's Vaughn Hilliard to help break some of this down. Vaughn, the biggest promise in the world for such a long time has been curing cancer. And you heard a little bit of talk about that here in this press conference, here at that pitch. Is this just like the art of the pitch? Is this for real? Because Stargate sounds like it's going to be doing way more than just medical here.
Right. I guess the question is, what are the bounds of AI? What is its potential here? And I just listened to Larry Ellison kind of expand a little bit more on what he thinks the future of AI in America is. Take a listen.
One of the most exciting things we're working on, again, using the tools that Sam and Masa are providing, is a cancer vaccine. Imagine early cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future.
So the promise of the future, but the crux of what today's announcement was the development of these data centers. Larry Ellison suggested that this project was already underway before Donald Trump was sworn into office yesterday, that some of these data centers were already being built across Texas. But what each of these men emphasized was that America needs to be out front in the investment in these data centers and the technologies, understanding that the chips and the electricity, the infrastructure requirements to power AI infrastructure is vast. And there were concerns among some in the AI community about regulations over AI infrastructure and regulations over the basic technology. And what Donald Trump, the now president, is committing is that the U.S. should be out on the forefront of competing with China in their own development of their own AI infrastructure.
And Vaughn, this is kind of a difficult question to answer, but like there are so many things that are happening right now that are hurtling us towards this singularity, this AI arms race that we've been seeing that goes back into the last administration. Obviously, infrastructure projects like this don't happen overnight. And if they are already talking about breaking ground in Texas and some of these places, like you got to wonder how long has this been in effect? And then on the other side, like you've got things like AGI on the horizon, the possible curing of cancer on the horizon, and it's all happening now, potentially under the Trump administration. Is this just like a coincidence of the universe, or are they serious about giving him credit for what we're seeing here?
It's to their advantage to have a direct line of communication to the Oval Office. And look, like in this situation, nobody suggested that Donald Trump was the one that came up with the Stargate plan and a $500 billion investment. But what today's event suggests is that the President of the United States is eager to boast about and provide oxygen to the mass public about this type of infrastructure that is being developed. And that's where you saw yesterday who was sitting even in front of his own cabinet secretaries or nominees. It was Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Tim Cook of Apple. And I think that is indicative of these tech CEOs believing that their best pathway to not facing government hurdles in regulations that would inhibit their own ability to grow and develop is to have that direct line in a warm relationship with Donald Trump. And that runs in stark contrast, let's be very clear, Gadi, to the way that many of these CEOs and companies postured their relationships with Donald Trump during his first administration.
It's so interesting to hear you say that. I mean, for the longest time, we have just thought of the government and regulators as like not making a deal. Like the regulator says what you need to do. I just had an inspection on my home. He says, no, this isn't up to regulation. You need to change it. And yet it does seem like when it comes to regulation, there's going to be a lot of deal making in the next 4 years. Is that what you're sensing here?
I think that's what this relationship will more so look like. And in a lot of ways, Gadi, right? I'm not the guy that necessarily covers the tech industry. I usually cover the political end of this here. And I think that what we're seeing is the tech industry understanding that their best pathway to negotiating with Donald Trump is much like how Republican lawmakers have negotiated with Donald Trump. Those who go on the attack and try to, stand up, if you will, to Donald Trump. Liz Cheney, the list is quite lengthy. Their fortunes, politically speaking, haven't been as great as those who have tried to cozy up and tried to have a good relationship with him, even if they don't always win on the policy front. And I think that it's almost, in a way, you're watching now the tech and corporate side of American leadership sort of almost mimic the way that Republican politicians up on Capitol Hill have postured their own relationships with the now president.
Fascinating stuff. Vaughn Hilliard, thank you. And with all the incredibly consequential stuff happening around the world, somehow TikTok is still what so many people are asking about right now. So here is the latest there. As it stands today, Trump has delayed the ban on TikTok for 75 days, saying he's got a soft spot for it because he claims he won the youth vote, and that gives him just about 2.5 months to get a deal done with the social media giant.
If I don't do the deal, it's worthless, worth nothing. If I do the deal, it's worth maybe $1 trillion, $1 trillion. I could see making a deal where the U.S. gets 50% of TikTok, polices it a little bit or a lot, depends on them.
All right. It already does look like China all of a sudden might be open to deal making. In the past, they said that they would oppose any forced sale of the app, but now they're saying the decision is up to TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance. So what does the future hold for TikTok, and how is this going to impact it? By the way, this is TikTok CEO at the inauguration yesterday. Joining us now is Baratunde Thurston. He is a creator and host of Life with Machines podcast and the founding partner of Puck. Baratunde, thank you so much for being with us. Let's start with what everybody's talking about, the future of TikTok. What do you think is going to happen from here on out?
I'm not in the prediction game with this president, Gadi. Why are you going to put me on a spot like that? what I think is going to happen is drama. What I think is going to happen is a lot of smoke, a lot of mirrors, a lot of proclamations, and we'll see ultimately what happens in the end. To be really honest, I have a hard time believing that the app will just go away. Even people who voted for it to go away have started to walk some of that back on both sides of the aisle. This president is very eager to pander and cater to not only youth voters in this country, but I think he wants some kind of relationship with China for leverage and also for his, underhanded kind of deal making. So I suspect something will happen to preserve this thing, but what is left are still the core challenges of the youth of this country and the people of this country not having their data protected, of us being subject to a lot of algorithmic manipulation. And that is something that's not unique to the TikTok case. That is something that we deal with our own tech leadership and app platforms like Meta, Google, et cetera. So we are going to be given another chance to do this right. And I hope we take it this time. But it's going to be a hot mess on the way.
I mean, that is a great prediction. That's why we come to you about this stuff.
Predicting a hot mess is not going out on a limb with this particular administration.
No, not at all. Yesterday, I want to get your take on this. I remember seeing Zuckerberg, Musk, Zichu, all of them lined up, and I thought, seeing everybody in the same place, I thought, is this what the new Fourth Estate looks like when they're all standing there together? Because we've heard over and over again them talk about how the mainstream press is dead and it's replaced by the people. You are the media now, and yet everything is still very much going through their algorithms. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think what we saw was a big power flex. I think it's important to not just see these people as tech leaders, but to see them as accumulators of great wealth and great power with influence that really exceeds a lot of what our historic oligarchs had. Some just controlled a railroad or a series of printing presses or a set of mines, but technology isn't its own industry anymore. It's like the air we breathe. It's in everything we do, everything we care about. And so to have them physically positioned in front of the family, right, in front of the cabinet, is a physical metaphor for the amount of power they wield. And when you look at the lack of regulation that we've already had on this power through social media, whether it's TikTok or our homegrown, platforms, this is a much bigger level than that. We need a government that's going to work on behalf of the people, not just on behalf of those who've already accumulated the power. So I hope that this is a short-term stunt and flex. I know that there are a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who maintain a healthy skepticism of the tech industry, even as we all look forward to those beautiful promises of curing cancer and boosting economic productivity and deepening connectivity. Worthy goals, but ones that should be achieved with the consent and the participation of the people, not just the powerful.
Oh, man, and I'm not trying to get too existential here, but you're opening up the door here. I know you've talked a lot about the so-called broligarchy, but when it comes to the people and when it comes to the promise of empowering the people, ironically, I think on your Instagram, which is owned by Mark Zuckerberg, you were talking about this, and one of the takes that I saw that was fascinating was this whole disconnect between a centralized authority like the president and what are supposed to be these decentralized, democratized, give the people the power kind of tech platforms. How do you see all this playing out? Do you see that disconnect being reconciled or reconciled at all?
To be honest, Gadi, it's a challenging time. Like, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge there's a lot of people who are scared. There's a lot of people who are, with justification, freaked out. The attempt to do away with birthright citizenship with a stroke of a pen, even though the Constitution fortifies it, makes all of this deeply consequential. And so when you see these cracks in principle and practice, for me, they're opportunities. They're opportunities to remind us of what our deepest principles are, by, of, and for the people, not for the president, not just by the president or the powerful. And so tech is a good arena in which to watch this play out. So many people who are drawn to tech is because of the ability to build at the edge, to do peer-to-peer networking, to be on chain if you're in the blockchain, Web3, crypto world, to own your wallet and not be subject to a central authority. And so when you see the flagrant flaunting of central authority, the power of the state and the power of industry come together with not much voice of the people in that mix, that's a cause for caution. And for me, a cause for hope, because so many of the people who have backed this version of this president do believe in those deep principles. They've got that libertarian streak. And so I'm looking for them to remember. I'm looking for all of us to remember the RFK Jr. people who are so worried about regulatory capture when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry. What say you when you look at the pre-capture of a president, sitting with the top CEOs, inking a deal that we're not at the table, that our representatives duly elected are not a part of, at least not yet. So I want us to look at these cracks as openings to pour in a deeper spirit of government by, of, and for the people.
Baratunde Thurston, such a fascinating conversation. We hope you'll join us again for more. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, let's take a really quick break from all the changes in Washington, because we've got to talk about this insane winter storm dumping snow on the Gulf states like so many have never seen. Snow in places like Florida, blizzard warnings in parts of Texas and Louisiana, and that is the first time that has ever happened.
This is really exciting. I have literally never seen this in Florida before. I literally don't even know what shoes to wear. I'm wearing hiking shoes.
I just wanted to let you guys know that it's cold outside and I'm about to make me a snow angel. All right? I'm out.
Yeah, snow angel day. Parts of Louisiana already seeing about a foot of snow. Houston tied its record for the second biggest snowstorm the city has ever seen. And check out the welcome sign in Florida. The Sunshine State looking a lot more like a winter wonderland. Even beaches getting a little bit of a snowy action there. And as historic as this is, it can also be dangerous. Dozens of airports, roads are closed across the Gulf Coast. And it's not just the South. The Northeast is also dealing with freezing temperatures, states of emergency. NBC's Priscilla Thompson joins us from Houston, Texas. It is wild that is Houston behind you, Priscilla. And word on the street is you made your first snow angel ever tonight. And don't worry, we're not going to ask you to recreate that, because we can just replay the tape. I think we have it. Let's just play that real quick.
So I think it's just as simple as going down. Oh! All right, how does it look? Should I stand up?
Gloves, girl! Gloves! Oh my gosh, that looks so cold. Yeah, that was beautiful perfection. I mean, you nailed it there, but were your hands freezing?
Okay, Gadi, my hands were freezing, but I'm a Texan. This is how we do snow. We don't wear gloves. We just get out there.
Yeah, snow angels in jeans. How's it looking out there?
Yeah, so it is still very snowy out here. I will say I have not seen snow, since I was a kid was the last time I remember it snowing here. I wasn't here during the 2021 freeze, and even then it was nothing like what we're seeing today. We're talking about 3 inches here in Houston. There were parts of Louisiana that got more than 10 inches, so certainly a historic snowstorm. And I will tell you, everyone has been having a lot of fun with it today. We've seen folks out with their dogs, folks out with their sleds, all of that soaking it up. But now is where the concern is sort of continuing to grow, as you mentioned, some of the dangers that we're looking at here. And that's because as the sun has gone down, the temperatures are dropping. And so overnight, all of this snow could start to melt and then refreeze as ice. And so that's what the concern is going to be going into tomorrow morning. The good news is that temperatures, once the sun comes up, temperatures are expected to be above freezing. So they're hoping that that snow is going to melt fairly quickly and that ice is going to melt quickly. And that is important because we are in the South and there are not a lot of snow plows to be had in some of these cities. And so a lot of these officials are saying you're just kind of going to have to wait for it to melt. But folks have been taking the precautions. People I've spoken to said they're ready to hunker down for a couple days if they need to. Their pipes are wrapped, their plants are covered. But we are seeing a lot of people out on the roads, some folks in dune buggies and trucks doing some things that they shouldn't be doing out here. But there are a lot of officials sort of trying to keep an eye on things. So, so far, so good.
Yeah, just a reminder, you know, ice out there at night does not look like ice during the day. It is black. It is the color of the asphalt there. And do snow plows, can they bring them in from other places? Or is this just one of those things where it's like, nah, we're just going to wait this one out, give it a couple of days, everybody hunker down as best they can?
Yeah, so a little bit of a mix of both. We know that Houston doesn't have any snowplows. They borrowed some from some other Texas cities down in the valley that have them. Louisiana was able to borrow from Arkansas. So some of these states have been able to bring in some plows, but it may not be enough to really get to all of these areas. We saw earlier in Mobile County, Alabama, they had to shut down all of their bridges and roads because they deemed them impassable. And so those are some of the issues that folks are dealing with. But warming centers have opened for people who might need it. You know, right now, the death toll is up to 3 people who have died from hypothermia, 2 in Texas, 1 in Georgia. So urging people who are maybe outdoors to get in somewhere, whether that's a warming center or staying with a relative or wherever that may be. But they're also just continuing to urge people, stay off the roads, let them try to get those plows out there if they have them, or let the sun do its thing tomorrow so that folks can get back out safely. Gadi?
And at night, when the temperatures drop, let people get back inside, which we will let you do. Priscilla Thompson, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight.
You bet.
Out here in the west, some dangerous wind conditions are sparking new fires in Southern California, this time down near San Diego. And we have seen at least 3 fires pop up through the day in the San Diego area, some triggering evacuation orders as it got way too close to homes and businesses. Now, this comes as officials in Los Angeles are preparing for possible rain that could complicate recovery efforts from the Palisades and the Eaton fires in Altadena as people start to go back home there. An emergency order issued today is supposed to help clear up fire debris before any rain arrives. And NBC's Morgan Chesky is joining us now. He's down in San Diego keeping an eye on some of those fires. Morgan, what is the latest on those fires where you're at right now? Are they pretty much contained?
Yeah, Gadi, they are, but it was a far different scene here in the Mission Valley neighborhood earlier this afternoon. That's where an entire hillside really went up in flames. And though it's gotten a bit darker, I'll step out so you can just see how quickly this fire moved across this area. Gadi, if you look to the top of this ridge here, you'll see some of the apartment complexes that were evacuated with little to no notice as firefighters converged on this scene, trying to surround it as quickly as possible. We do know that helicopters were put to work making water drops. Fortunately, in this case, Gadi, they were able to contain it. But if Todd, our photographer, can push in here, Gadi, you'll see a concern happening as we speak. These telephone poles in the burn zone, Gadi, are burning from the inside, still smoldering. And there is a concern right now, that's why we're keeping our distance, that they will collapse and cause at least a localized power outage here. We're just across the street from one of the biggest malls in San Diego. We know portions of it were temporarily shut down out of concern of this fire. But as it stands right now, the red flag warning expiring at 10 o'clock tonight. But a firefighter said it best earlier, Gadi, saying that even though this red flag warning will expire, it should not make anyone feel necessarily significantly more comfortable simply because we have an abundance of dry fuel. We still have some uncertain winds here. And as we found out earlier today, it does not take much to move those flames incredibly quickly and pose yet another fire that crews have to respond to here.
Yeah, those crews, I mean, it's just another reminder that something like this can happen at any time, and it could have been so much worse if they weren't there. In L.A., how much time do we have to get all of the debris out of the way of possible mudslides before we start to see all this rain coming in?
We know that early forecasts, Gadi, are suggesting rain as soon as this weekend. Now, what we're not seeing is a forecast of that atmospheric river that is a significant rain event. But officials say any sort of significant rainfall could still pose a problem simply because of that charred earth leading to instability on a lot of those hillside, particularly Palisade communities. I had a chance to speak with a fire captain earlier this week. He says that they should be studying those specific areas to see if they will be prone to landslides, to mudslides, and they're going to try to have a better idea at what areas could be most vulnerable. But that said, the rain, as much as we could use it to tamp down some of those fires, as you mentioned, kind of bringing up a whole new potential threat here. And so particularly in L.A., a new concern presenting itself, even as everyone's trying to move forward from these fires here. Gadi?
And we do need that rain. Morgan Chesky, thank you. And here's some of the other stories happening out west that we're following right now. There are two key hearings today in big cases. First, the Idaho murders case against Brian Kohberger. A closed hearing looked at whether the motions in Thursday's hearing should be public. And a court order out just minutes ago says the hearing will be live streamed but not open to the public attendance because of sealed proceedings. So we'll see about that. And a second hearing was set for the murder of Tupac. A Las Vegas judge denying a request to drop the case against Dwayne Davis, who's accused of being behind the drive-by shooting of Tupac back in 1996. The defense has argued the delay in prosecution violated Davis's rights, but the DA said recent confessions led to those charges. The trial is set for March 17th. And a few months ago, we covered a pretty unique case in Colorado. That's where lawyers argued that 5 elephants that were held by a zoo were held against their rights. Now, the Colorado Supreme Court has ruled in favor of the zoo, saying habeas corpus rights only apply to humans and the elephants are not legally people. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Still ahead, everyone charged in the attack on the Capitol pardoned or had their sentences commuted. What the January 6ers are saying now that they're out of jail, and what Trump is saying about those who were convicted of violence against police. But first, a ski resort in Turkey goes up in flames. What we are learning about this massive fire, where it started, and that's all coming up and around the world. So stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. Violence has erupted in the West Bank, and it has become an early test for the new Trump administration and their relations with the Middle East. NBC's Raf Sanchez has the latest from Tel Aviv.
Tonight, even as the fragile ceasefire holds in Gaza, violence is surging in the occupied West Bank. Israeli forces storming into the city of Jenin. Armored bulldozers joining ground troops. Prime Minister Netanyahu calling the operation Iron Wall and says his forces are rooting out terrorism. But a Palestinian human rights group says Israeli troops also fired on civilians. This man narrowly escaping the bullets flying around him. While Fadi Saadi says his brother was killed by a sniper while out buying bread. The IDF didn't respond to our request for comment, but says it tries to avoid civilian casualties. The Israeli raid launched just hours after President Trump took the stage at a Washington rally flanked by the families of hostages.
We never stopped praying for you.
One of his first official acts, revoking sanctions the Biden administration imposed on extremist Israeli settlers in the West Bank. That executive order signed as dozens of settlers attacked Palestinian homes, setting some on fire, according to Israel's military. The settlers furious over the release of around 90 Palestinian prisoners, mostly women and children, in exchange for 3 Israeli hostages freed Sunday. Tonight, a new image of one of them, Emily Damari, defiantly showing the 2 fingers she lost on October 7th. Romy Gonen telling her father, "Daddy, I came back alive." Doctors say all 3 seem to be in good health, given the 471 days of captivity they endured. But they face a long road to recovery ahead.
We know that they're going to be overwhelmed.
We got an exclusive look inside Bellinson Schneider, a Tel Aviv hospital preparing to receive the next group of freed hostages.
All of the rooms are prepared for a returnee and a family member if they would want them in
The task ahead, figuring out how to treat hostages who spent 15 months in captivity.
There's a full book written in preparation for this and how to refeed patients that haven't been fed, haven't seen sunlight, no vitamin D.
How do you feel when you think about the hostages coming back to rooms like this?
Oh my God, I can't even. You just said that sentence and I'm all in goosebumps.
And Tom, Israel's top general announcing his resignation tonight, saying he takes responsibility for the military's failure to stop the October 7th attack. That is adding to pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been resisting calls for a 9/11 commission-style investigation into mistakes made by Israel's generals, its intelligence chiefs, and its elected leaders.
Raf Sanchez, thank you. Let's take a quick look at some headlines that are happening around the world. There are 2 American hostages that are now free after being held by the Taliban in Afghanistan. Now, this one dates back to the Biden administration when they reached a prisoner swap deal right before leaving office. They were swapped for a man who was convicted of narco-terrorism charges back in 2008. Now, the Trump White House welcomed this release, saying that it will continue demanding that the Taliban release other American hostages. And at least 76 people are dead after a fire at a ski resort hotel in Turkey. Now, that fire engulfed the building in less than 30 minutes in the middle of the night. Some people were forced to jump out of the windows. Sky News reports the fire started in the hotel's restaurant. And Prince Harry could be settling with Rupert Murdoch's British newspaper group after all. Today's scheduled trial start was delayed thanks to some last-minute settlement discussions. Prince Harry is suing the group over alleged unlawful conduct by journalists and private investigators hired by The Sun and News of the World. The newspaper group says the allegations are not true. And world leaders and CEOs are now gathering out there in Davos, Switzerland for the World Economic Forum. Today, Ukrainian President Zelensky said Europe has to become a strong global player by itself, given its proximity to Russia. European leaders also agreed on a stronger commitment to the Paris Climate Pact now that the United States has withdrawn. President Trump is expected to deliver a speech on Thursday there, but virtually. And coming up, President Trump's day 1 sweeping executive orders on immigration, day 2, legal challenges, and lots of them. Plus, California's Attorney General is joining us to talk about the fight to keep birthright citizenship in place. Hey, welcome back. And here's some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. The FBI isn't sharing a lot of details in an investigation into a U.S. border agent who was shot and killed in Vermont yesterday. They do say that one suspect is dead and another was hurt in the incident and taken into custody. Vermont's Senator Bernie Sanders and other state lawmakers have sent condolences to the agent's family. Meanwhile, Senate confirmation hearings continue on the Hill. Today's lineup included New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, President Trump's pick for UN ambassador, and earlier Stefanik pledged to push Trump's America First stance and roll out a review of U.S. funding as part of her plan to reform the UN. And jury selection started for the trial of hip-hop star A$AP Rocky. He's charged with firing a gun at a former friend here in Los Angeles back in 2021. Now, he's pleaded not guilty, but he could spend up to 24 years in prison if he's convicted. The trial comes as the fashion mogul is expected to take the role of the co-chair at this year's Met Gala. And British guitarist John Sykes, known for his work with rock bands Thin Lizzy and Whitesnate, died yesterday. He started his career in the 1980s and later joined Whitesnate, co-writing some of the band's biggest songs. Sykes passed away from cancer. He was 65 years old. And a new study is out today about the pros and cons of weight loss drugs like Ozempic. Now, the positives included lower risks of infection and cardiac diseases, but it's also got some negative effects like higher risks of reflux and inflamed kidneys. 1 in 8 U.S. adults say they have tried Ozempic or similar weight loss drugs. And we're about to show you what happened after President Trump pardoned 1,500 people charged in connection with the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Take a look.
Let's go! Keep it down! Let's go, Gilbert! Brother! Oh, yeah! Let's go! Yeah! Welcome home, heroes!
They just left me in this holding cell, and finally the marshal showed up, and she got me out. And I'll be home soon.
Free at last.
Now, we saw those pardons happen last night. The scenes we just showed you, those happened today, and those pardons and commutations include people who walked into the Capitol, but also people who attacked Capitol police officers with things like metal batons, fire extinguisher, a wooden plank. And now one of the former officers who was attacked is speaking out about those pardons. Take a listen.
We don't feel as though we can depend on law enforcement in this country to protect us, because it's no longer the Department of Justice. It's Donald Trump's Department of Justice.
Let's bring in NBC's Ryan Riley, who's been covering this stuff since January 6, 2021. Ryan, good to see you. Over 1,500 pardons in one executive order. How unprecedented is this?
It's really unprecedented. I mean, I've been trying to think about this and clock it, right? And if you kind of have to think it on scales of Watergate, because, you know, what we were talking about with Watergate was a few folks breaking into the DNC. And in this instance, we have, you know, we have thousands of people who broke into the U.S. Capitol, a co-equal branch of government, on January 6th. Now, only, 1,500 of them were ultimately charged, but there were more than 3,000 who entered the building alone, and that doesn't even count if you add on the others who assaulted police officers outside. So you're talking about a massive group of people. And really, when you go back to the beginning, I think what the issue was here is that the federal government vastly underestimated the number of people who would storm the Capitol. And I think that's what they sort of set up their entire approach to this, because they were thinking that this was only going to be 800 cases. And lo and behold, we're going to end this investigation with 200 people who've been identified by the online sleuths as having assaulted officers that day and were never charged. There won't even be a public record of the charges against them because there were no charges.
And Brian, speaking of the investigation, I mean, there's so many investigations and so many hours spent investigating, a lot of cases still pending. There was surveillance, there was tracking. What happens to all of that? Does it just disappear? Does everyone just go scot-free? Is there a way that anybody could challenge this executive order down the way, or is this just a done deal? It's all gone.
Done deal, all gone. The Constitution grants Donald Trump really broad, ability to pardon whoever he wants who is charged with a federal crime. So that's what he has done here. And it's a sweeping, broad pardon. And, when I talked to the Trump campaign and when I talked to the Trump transition, they kept telling me, oh, yes, we're just going to do these on a case-by-case basis. But, if we looked at the question that our colleague Peter Alexander actually tossed at Donald Trump tonight, it was deeply clear that he had no real sense of a lot of these cases. Basically, there's a group of individuals who are supportive of the January 6th defendants who have been telling him one story about what happened on January 6th. So he's getting this one-sided story, and I frankly don't think he has a lot of the information. Now, that's not to say that he doesn't also endorse a lot of the violence that happened here, but because I think clearly that's what the pardon shows. But I just also think there's he wasn't aware of a lot of the details of these cases.
So you're saying, just to clarify, you're saying that you don't think that the president knows about, the tasing of officers or the hitting of officers by members of this crowd?
I don't think a lot of Americans do, frankly. I don't think this really broke through because it wasn't as shareable on social media. I've kind of thought about that a lot. I cover federal courts, and it's really tough to get evidence out of those things. There's no cameras allowed inside. And so this really didn't break through on social media. I talked to still acquaintances today who are like, oh, is that still happening? It just doesn't sort of grab everyone's attention unless you really sort of slam them over the head with video on it. And I think that that's kind of one of the fundamental issues here, that the government was up against this social media environment, and they couldn't fight back in the same way that a lot of people on those social media platforms do, because they're bound by the rules of the Justice Department.
Yeah, and yet we're seeing those images on the screen right there. Ryan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And a new way to pay to fly JetBlue. Details on a first in the airline industry and tonight's Future of Everything. But first, you got to see this. This is a race to save a moose from icy waters, and it happened in way upstate New York in the Adirondacks. A bystander told police they watched that moose walk out 200 feet onto the frozen lake, and then it fell in, and two officers walked out on the ice, then used a chainsaw to clear a path, then helped guide the moose back to safety. That animal spent 2 hours in the freezing water, but you're able to see it's just walking off right there, so hopefully it'll be okay. Now it's on its own. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. So the scores and scores of orders that Trump signed yesterday, declaring a national emergency at the border was definitely up there. And that order alone deploys military there to help enforce Trump's promise to crack down on immigration. Meanwhile, today, Trump's border czar said deportation operations are starting. And shortly after he was sworn in, Trump shut down the CBP One app that lets migrants apply to enter the United States legally as asylum seekers. They're also canceling any upcoming appointments that had been previously scheduled. Meanwhile, lawsuits are already starting to come in. Over 20 states are suing Trump now over his attempt to end birthright citizenship. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez has more on Trump's immigration crackdown.
At the National Cathedral today, prayer and politics collided.
The vast majority of immigrants are not criminals.
With President Trump looking on, the bishop delivered an unusually political sermon criticizing his deportation plan.
I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away.
The president later responding.
I didn't think it was a good service. No. They can do much better.
Tonight, the backlash is growing after his sweeping executive actions on immigration.
If I were to lose my parents due to deportation, my whole world would fall apart.
At least 22 states are already suing over Trump's attempt to end birthright citizenship for children of undocumented immigrants. Connecticut's attorney general saying Trump has zero respect for our Constitution, which spells out anyone born in the U.S. is a citizen.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. We have very good grounds. People have wanted to do this for decades.
The president also halting the program that resettles refugees in the U.S., including Afghans fleeing the Taliban.
They haven't received clarifying information, and they're scared that they're going to die.
But Trump won the election after pledging tougher border security. This Republican county commissioner in Chicago supports Trump's immigration crackdown after more than 51,000 migrants arrived there.
Funding is absolutely not sustainable. Between the county, between the city, we've spent nearly $1 billion.
And after labeling cartels foreign terrorist organizations, Trump is not ruling out sending special forces into Mexico.
Stranger things have happened.
Mexico's president said today that her country would defend its sovereignty, but act in a humanitarian way with migrants waiting across the border.
And NBC's Gabe Gutierrez joins us now. Gabe, the cancellation of CBP One, the screening appointments, all of that, what happens now?
Well, that is a huge question. There are thousands of migrants right now at the U.S. southern border, actually on the Mexican side, wondering what happens next because many of them had appointments already that they had been waiting months for. But the CBP One app was canceled, but also all the scheduled initial screening appointments were also canceled. So this raises so many questions about how easy it will be to apply for asylum going forward. It's just gotten a lot more difficult. It had gotten more difficult in the waning days of the Biden administration because that administration had tightened asylum restrictions. But now, other than going directly to a port of entry, and that can be very difficult, there are just so many questions, Gadi, about the future of the asylum system in this country as a whole.
And we're starting to see school districts around the country sending out alerts to communities, and they're warning about the possibility of immigration agents starting to arrest migrants for deportations around schools. Do you know what mass deportations are going to look like here in the United States?
Well, that is another huge question that we've been asking the incoming Trump administration now for quite some time. But today, ICE did start allowing its officers to arrest undocumented immigrants in sensitive areas, as you mentioned, schools, churches, daycare centers. Now, this is different from the Biden administration. The president saying that ICE officers will use common sense when it comes to this. But when it comes to mass deportations, Gadi, we went along with ICE on one of their targeted enforcement operations just last month in the Boston area. And this is something that they do every day already. The problem is that it requires an incredible amount of manpower. The ride-along that we were part of took more than a dozen agents, and they took 5-6 hours to just arrest a handful of undocumented immigrants, and they had already been surveilling them for several weeks, 40, 50 hours of surveillance per person. And with ICE facing a $230 million budget shortfall, that is the question. How will ICE be able to do this? And it may be why, Gadi, we haven't seen that huge, large-scale roundup that President Trump was talking about during the campaign on day one. It may be these smaller targeted enforcement operations that ICE has been doing, but we do expect that to happen now in several of those key cities, for example, Chicago, Denver, Philadelphia, and the D.C. area. The question is exactly when, Gadi.
Gabe Gutierrez, really appreciate you watching this for us. Thank you. And joining us now is California's Attorney General Rob Bonta. He's part of that massive lawsuit challenging the president's attempt to end birthright citizenship. Thank you so much for being with us. So, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the way that I understand it, Trump's whole argument seems to hang on the interpretation of like 6 words in the 14th Amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, those are those words, are citizens of the United States. How do you interpret and subject to the jurisdiction thereof? Do you think that there is wiggle room there?
No, his actions are unconstitutional. He is wrong on the law. He has acted unlawfully. He's trampled on our Constitution, attacked children, and attacked U.S. citizens. He has a fringe theory that he's advancing, but that subject to the jurisdiction thereof is usually referencing foreign diplomats and their children. They are subject to the jurisdiction of their home country, not America, when they are on American soil. It could also be applied to a foreign army occupying American soil, which of course is not what's at stake here. So it's a fringe theory that has never been adopted by any court, by the United States, certainly rejected by the U.S. Supreme Court. This case law here is settled. It's done and dusted. It's over 125 years old. The Wong Kim Ark case, right out of my great state of California and out of San Francisco. A Chinese American with birthright citizenship went to China, came back, his citizenship was challenged, and he went to court to stand up for his birthright citizenship, and he won, and the court agreed, reaffirmed birthright citizenship over 125 years ago. So the clear and unambiguous language of the 14th Amendment, the U.S. Supreme Court precedent that has interpreted the 14th Amendment since, all support our view and interpretation of the 14th Amendment, and we believe we will prevail in court, that we'll get a national injunction, and that we will stop this unlawful, unconstitutional executive order from being implemented before it even gets started.
How many people would this affect here in California, just California alone?
We anticipate close to 25,000 babies per year would otherwise be entitled to birthright citizenship. And if the executive order is implemented, they would not have that citizenship, meaning they could be deported immediately. They couldn't get a passport or social security number. They wouldn't have access to food or housing or healthcare programs subsidized by the federal government. They couldn't vote, couldn't serve on a jury, couldn't run for office. So they will be deprived of many life-saving and health-enhancing services and programs, as well as the rights and privileges of being a U.S. citizen.
And you know, I know you're confident about how you think your case is going to go, but I got to ask, like, are you worried about partisanship in the judiciary as this moves forward at all?
You know, we've seen cases like the Dobbs case, like the Bruin case, not go the way we hoped and not go the way we think the law dictates. So we are certainly not naive, but we believe that in any court that is fair, that is objective, that looks at the facts and does an appropriate, rigorous analysis of the law that we present to them, that we will prevail. And we are very confident in our case. I feel that we have the overwhelming weight of the merits, and believe that no court should adopt this fringe theory being advanced by President Trump.
California Attorney General Rob Bonta, thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
Sure. And before we go, much more on the start of the Trump administration, a closer look at the sweeping climate policies, including the return of Drill Baby Drill. That's coming up tonight on Temperature Check. Hey, welcome back. And what kind of signal do President Trump's executive orders on climate change send to the world? That's a question that we're going to try to get to in just a moment. But first, check out Future of Everything headlines that we've got right now. If you have any leftover money in your Venmo balance, you can now use it to fly JetBlue. The airline announced it's a first-of-a-kind deal today. Customers can use their balance or their linked bank accounts to book a flight through Venmo, and that feature is currently available on their website. and you just hit the JetBlue app in the coming months. And doctors in the UK are trying to boost people's moods with a brain-computer interface. The trial will implant a device behind the skull but outside of the brain, and then it will use ultrasounds to send pulses and reorganize neurons. Doctors say they hope it'll eventually help treat things like depression, addiction, and epilepsy. And if your head is spinning trying to keep track of all those executive orders, you are not alone, but among them, a flurry of actions that have the potential to reshape our environmental agenda for years to come. And you might think that this would have been a big takeaway.
That is why today I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill. We will be a rich nation again, and it is that liquid gold under our feet that will help to do it.
Honestly, this didn't even scratch the surface of the sweeping changes that are set to take place. Let's dive into them with our next guest, Benji Backer. He's the author of The Conservative Environmentalist, as well as the founder and executive chairman of American Conservation Coalition. Benji, good to see you. I can't wait to hear your take here. I know we've talked a lot in the past. What is Trump trying to accomplish here? And when you hear drill, baby, drill, what goes through your mind?
Well, look, it's great to see you again. And honestly, there's a lot to unpack here. But first, let's state the facts. The facts are America is reducing emissions more than any other country. We do have an increased demand for energy that we have to meet, but we also have to protect our environment and protect our climate. The problem with the environmental politics of today is exactly what we saw today, which is that each side is just ping-ponging this issue back and forth. Donald Trump's not the only one doing it. The left is doing it. The right is doing it. And it's a disservice to our country. I toured the largest solar facility in the world, manufacturing facility in the world. It's in Ohio, made by Invenergy. These are companies that are investing in America to produce the next generation of electricity to meet the growing energy demand. We can't be picking winners and losers in the energy fight, because it actually screws over Americans. It screws over the companies that are trying to deal with the inconsistency of having one-size-fits-all policies, either only oil and gas or only wind and solar. We need to meet energy demand and also reduce emissions. And right now, neither side is really doing a very good job of outlining an agenda that provides consistency, but also allows us to protect our environment. We've got to get this issue out of the culture wars because it's a big, big problem.
Yeah, get it out of the culture wars. And yet, let me ask you this. We're seeing, tech being so involved in this administration, and a lot of Silicon Valley, like people that traditionally were very big on renewable energy. And you'd think that would infuse a little bit of some of the renewable energy that we've seen. And yet, they also are looking after their AI needs, and that is a massive energy suck. So how do you see all of that developing over the next few years?
Well, look, it's really complicated because we have an expected increase in energy of 15 to 20% by 2030. That's a lot of energy that we need to add to the grid. And if we start taking off wind and taking off solar or taking off oil and gas, we need it all. And if we start taking those things off the grid, it will result in blackouts for Americans, hardworking Americans that don't deserve that. I just believe that what President Trump needs to do is embrace a truly all-of-the-above energy strategy. Right now, he's kind of over-focusing on oil and gas, but there are so many benefits to nuclear and solar and wind and geothermal. Thankfully, his energy secretary and his interior secretary believe in climate change, and they're big proponents of all of the above energy. I have belief that, over the next 1,460 days, which is how much time he has left in office, barring some unforeseen circumstance, that he changes his tune a little bit on this to be a little bit more of a pro-environment, pro-energy president, not just picking oil and gas only, because we need it all to meet energy demand. And if he wants to leave a legacy for himself, he will prioritize an agenda that makes America beautiful again, works with both sides to improve our environment, but also make sure that we're meeting our energy needs.
Fascinating conversation. As always, Benji Backer, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you, too. And that's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.